Give me a glimmer of hope again. Save me from all my wandering. If I've been looking in all the wrong places, would you turn me back around again?
Welcome to HopeCasts, where our true stories brighten your day by providing insight and encouragement. I invite you to listen as my husband, Dr. Ken Brown, shares one of his amazing personal experiences that will inspire and stir your soul. Even in the challenges of life's darkest moments, you can always find a glimmer of hope through the love of God. So settle in, open your heart, and let's journey together through the power of storytelling.
The keys. While waiting for the cashier at a grocery store, have you ever switched over to the seemingly shorter line, then only to watch helplessly as your original place passed through the checkout? Then you're forced to wait and wait and wait for some fossilized clerk who is apparently stuck living in slow motion. This, of course, only and always seems to occur when you are the most pressed to make an appointment, like wading through frozen molasses with your ankles tied together while chained to an iron anvil. My darling wife, Lynn, and I, during a trip to Barbados to help a family adopt a baby from Florida, had one of these tyranny of time experiences. After a late arrival on a flight from Miami, in a futile attempt to make up time, we changed lines not once, but twice at the customs in Barbados, only to be delayed by an overly efficient and officious official. But worse, we then waited beyond the point of patience to the very edge of desperation for our luggage. Everyone else had come to the baggage carousel, picked up their suitcases, and left, while we waited until it seemed that there was no one left in the entire airport. And then both of our bags suddenly fell down the chute onto the conveyor belt for no apparent reason. The absolute last pieces to be taken off, forwarded from the plane. You see, our plan was to be there early, to be picked up by this adopted family. And of course, we wanted to make a good impression, a professional and favorable first appearance. I was worrying as now we had greatly delayed them, making them wait in the hot Caribbean sun at an airport that was lacking in any air conditioning. In a matter of speaking, no matter how hurrier I became, the further behind I had become. Our adoption mission was successful. And the family, well, they were wonderful, not to mention being entirely understanding about our tardiness. But now, the real story begins. After returning to Miami on our flight that arrived earlier than was scheduled. First, Lynn and I sailed right through immigration after being directed by a kind immigration officer past waiting rows of impatient lines of shuffling visitors to an official at the end of the room with no one at his kiosk. He only smiled at us, stamped our passports, and then we raced to the baggage carousel, arriving even before anyone else from our plane. Only 90 seconds later, can you believe it? 90 seconds later, the very first two pieces of luggage to flop out of that chute were ours. I exclaimed, "There is a God, thank you!" So we scooped up our suitcases and roared through customs as there was no one else even in line. We were even on time for the hotel shuttle that was just driving through the airport to return us to our trusty Jetta. Never before we'd ever experienced such a quick exit from any airport, not to mention from an international flight after 9/11. Always in a hurry, we were rushing to visit an adoptive family near Key West, Florida, who had just been blessed with an adoptive baby. But they had left a message on our cell phone that their plans had suddenly changed. So we were not able to meet with them. That was very distressing, as we had arranged our flight schedule and planned our weekend to facilitate this meeting. As Lynn took the messages off our answering machine, the next item was from a couple who really wanted to begin their adoption by commencing the home study. As I threaded through the madness of Miami traffic to the turnpike, then north to home, Lynn telephoned this couple as it was only 8:30 p.m. They lived in it, ready for this, Key West, and they wanted us to visit them the very next day. So I turned the car around to head south. You see, if the plane was late or even on time, or we had the normal delays at the airport, it would have been just too late to phone them, and we would have been unable to visit them for several weeks due to the distance, and also it was Christmas season. God is so good. He replaced the visit that we had with another visit at the same place. Lynn has such a gift for shopping, and she likes nothing better than having a good deal. So trying to find accommodations in the Keys is always challenging. But she managed to find a resort at a subsidized price after she explained that we were an adoption agency coming to help a local couple become a family. It was tired, and I was late when we got there, but the hotel attendant warmly welcomed us, giving us an upscale room right on the ocean, and then lowering the quoted price. Because do you know why? Her mother, coincidentally, was the president of the local adoption and foster support group. Only God can do this. In the morning at checkout, the hotel manager recommended a place for breakfast right on the water, where the locals eat. It sounded so idyllic. So on our way back to our appointment, we drove past the IHOP and pulled into this diner that had backed up into a marina. We sat down, and the only other person in the entire restaurant was a single fellow who was waiting for his food in the table behind us. After we ordered, a man came over carrying the food and says, "As the owner of this establishment, I never sit down with my customers, but I'm making an exception today for you." And then he sat down at the table with the single man behind us. And they began to talk loudly about a local arsonist who was destroying homes in the area. As we have friends who lived in the Keys, we asked a few questions and were quickly included into the conversation. I think cell phones are the bane of modern existence. You can't live with cell phones, and you can't live without them. Ring, ring, ring. So Lynn picked up the phone while I continued talking to these local yokels. It was one of my best friends who was calling, and he was going through a terrible time in his life. And I heard my very wise wife attempt to encourage him by confidently stating, "You are experiencing painful things that you do not understand. But if you remember, God has a plan for your life and will turn these things somehow into good. Just wait on God for comfort and strength. Seek God for his answer and direction." Lynn later told me that my friend was amazing to hear her say word for word the very same message that the Lord had just revealed to him earlier that morning through his devotion. Well, the owner of the restaurant in the next table also had heard us talking, and he heard my wife's passionate conversation. He suddenly bellowed in bitter sarcasm, "Right, God has a plan for my life and has a reason why he allowed my dear wife and two sweet girls to be killed by a drunk driver on Christmas Eve. Right." Although the rage was evident in his tone, the only thing I saw was years of unrelenting torment etched on his face that scarred his very soul. Without volition and overlooking his deliberate hostility to me, my heart went out to him for his loss, his loneliness, and the savage suffering. So I allowed him to vent his pain and drain the festering wound. With which included great anger directed towards God, particularly when in a broken voice he stammered how he had to give the presents away that he had bought and wrapped for his children, and they were underneath the tree waiting for them, but they didn't come home. He had endured this loss of his beloved family, then faced financial ruin and a major health crisis, which left him handicapped. And he ranted, and he raved, and he rambled until he finally ended up crying softly. I gently reminded him that regardless of us never being able to understand or figure out any of this, God truly feels your sorrow. God loves you tenderly. God is crying for you. One day, brother, you will be reunited with them in heaven. And then all I could do was give him my phone number, inviting him to call me anytime, day or night. He seemed to appreciate my invitation, and I hope at least he felt my compassion for him. Wow. And it was not even yet 9 o'clock in the morning. We jumped into our little car and started to jet south across the beautiful overseas highway in the Keys, which links the many islands to each other by these 40 bridges. All around us, on every side, was a rich kaleidoscope of scintillating shades of the brightest and bluest seas that God ever painted. The Caribbean should be copyrighted and trademarked as its very own color. Beaches and boats, seagulls and sunbathers, white clouds and whiter combs of sea foam, and always the ocean on both sides, painted a portrait on every side, on every window. Moments like this can only be experienced. Words fail and memories fade. And then that beep, beep, beep of that phone, it was ringing again, only to steal my attention and shatter my transcendent appreciation of God's glorious creation. It was my friend again, calling to thank Lynn for her inspiring message to him. And as she passed the phone to me, groan, I told him about the sad man who had just lost his entire family. And as we talked, the Lord had me remind my friend who had lost his daughter in a car crash about the many other miracles in his life when God had blessed by helping him through his other trials. I told him that life is like a dot-to-dot coloring book given to a child. Well, at first, the pictures in that dot-to-dot color book are simple. The dot views and the numbering are easy. And you can even sort of see the pattern even without connecting all the dots. But then as the book gets more, the pictures get more complicated, the numbering gets more obscure and confusing, the dot patterns are more confusing, and it only starts to merge, the pattern only starts to merge after you connect every dot. You see, life is like that. Some things never make sense until God connects the final dots of your life. Only then you'll be able to understand what the Lord has been doing in your life through all these many tragedies that you've experienced. But if we're all honest, we all get stuck on a page or two saying that, what is this all about? This page number 39 doesn't make sense. And what about page 43? God must be cruel or made a mistake, or at the very least, he must have been sleeping when he allowed the terrible X factor into our life. As a child painting in the coloring book of my life, I was stuck on a terrible arrangement of painful dots. And so, in desperation, I remember what I did. I carefully reviewed pages 1 through 38 in my own book. And as I saw God's pattern, slowly faith awakened in my spirit. As I saw the author of my dot-to-dot coloring book had the wisdom to make wonderful pictures of all the other things that were in my life. Therefore, I just had to trust him that even if I could not make sense of this at this time, there was still meaning in the madness, albeit far beyond my comprehension from my current frame of reference. Participating in the pain prevents us from appreciating the purpose, and it impairs our apprehension of the point of the whole experience. The miles clicked, and as I attempted to encourage my friend, we ran out of road at the end of Bridges and US 1 in Key West. He thanked me, saying goodbye, as we drove up to the driveway of the couple where I had come to help with their home study. We wanted to help them adopt these children, and they welcomed us warmly to their home. They invited us like royalty, and they made new friends with us, and they were unable to have biological children together, but they longed for the experience of a family. As part of the excuse for being somewhat tardy, I told this couple about my friend losing his daughter and the man who had been bereaved from his family. The husband suddenly stopped me and then told me the tale of how his wife suddenly divorced him after 24 years and moved to a northern state, taking his two daughters with him, 14 and 10 years of age. A short time later, he received a horrendous telephone call that on the way home from church with his girls, his ex-wife ran through a red light at a high speed. A pickup truck crashed into the car, instantly killing his older daughter and severely and permanently injuring his younger daughter, who was then in the hospital for many months after that. This dear man had his faith in a loving God severely tried, and he had gone into a year of counseling to help him endure such devastating loss. The adoption business was shelved as Lynn and I ministered to him, but he ended up ministering to us. He told us that adopting would bring comfort to him, as he would feel that his life had purpose again in the blessing of providing for a child, now that he had recovered and remarried to a lovely lady. The man agreed that the key to recovering from his overwhelming grief in Key West was to lose his pain in the service of others. We delayed our intended departure as we really wanted to connect with this courageous couple. But it quickly became apparent that it was dark and there was no lights on the Keys. We had to drive home. Only a half moon sparkling across the black water illuminated the long road back home. 5 hours of driving, and Lynn and I passed yawns between us like a ping pong match. Then 2 hours from home, we received another call from someone that we were counseling who was lost in his addiction. He had just overdosed and was desperate for us to help him. As we talked and prayed for him, he decided to throw out his stash of drugs, a large number of drugs, so dangerous that it would have definitely, most certainly killed him had he continued taking them. It was a personal victory for this addict and a step towards his deliverance. He stopped in the middle of a road and picked him up and transported him to a safe home so his family would be able to be monitored throughout the night. By the time we finally arrived home, it was almost 3 a.m., and we instantly fell into a most exhausted, dreamless sleep of marathon runners. But we were happy to have been the pawns of God being moved around on his chessboard and available for his purposes. You see, the key is that it's much more blessed to give than receive. And our recovery is very much based on getting our internal eyes off of ourselves onto the needs of others. The secret is that the Lord can often use broken people far better than the whole, because only the wounded have learned to survive by drawing comfort from the God of all comfort. The Bible confirms all of this. In 2 Corinthians 1, 3b through 6, it says, God is our merciful Father, and he's the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort others. And when we're troubled, we'll be able to give them that very same comfort that God has given us. For the more that we suffer for Christ, the more that God will shower us with his comfort through Christ. Even when we're weighted down with troubles, it is for your comfort and your salvation. For when we ourselves are comforted, we will certainly be able to comfort you. Then you can patiently endure the same things that we suffer. The key is to learn from the sufferings, draw on God, so that you in turn can be a conduit of comfort to other people. May the Lord bless and take care of you, even in the middle of your pain.
Thank you for tuning into HopeCasts for inspiring stories that will touch your heart. If today's story encouraged you, then please subscribe to our channel and visit us at hopecasts.org to learn more. You can also watch the video version of this story and many more from Dr. Brown on our HopeCasts, YouTube, or listen on our Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Music podcasts. Until next time, keep holding on to hope, and please share these stories with someone who really needs encouragement. May God bless you.
I've been searching and I've been seeking. It seems like you're nowhere to be found, and I'd do anything just to see you. If I close my eyes, will I see you now? 'Cause I know faith hopes in what can't be seen, but my hope feels like a distant dream. Give me a glimmer of hope again. Save me from all my wandering. If I've been looking in all the wrong places, would you turn me back around?